Hello and welcome to State and Local Government and Politics. My name is Jim Toot and I'm an Associate Professor of Political Science at Central Virginia Community College. Module 4, Key Actors and the Policy Process, Part 1, Introduction and Political Participation in Post-Industrial America. Public policy and the policy process have been defined in the following way by most social scientists that study these phenomena. Policy is what the government says and does about perceived problems. Policy making is how the government decides what will be done about perceived problems. Policy making is a process of interaction about governmental and non-governmental actors. Policy is the outcome of that interaction. For many state and local governments, the process can become rather complex, featuring a multitude of actors engaged in one or more aspects of policy making. Broadly speaking, one can place the actors in the state and local government policymaking process in one of two broad categories: institutional actors and non-institutional actors. Institutional actors, the subjects including legislative bodies, executive departments, and the judicial branch involved in the public policy process, are governments and governmental agencies that deal with public affairs. The United States has a very large number of such agencies and governments due to the federal, as opposed to unitary, nature of the U.S. political system. The separation of powers provided for in both our federal and state constitutions keep our governmental system decentralized. In countries such as Japan, Great Britain, or France, where governmental power is more centralized, far fewer such institutional actors become involved in regional and local policy making. Non-institutional actors. Individuals or groups independent of the government and involved in the policy process, including political parties, interest groups, social movements, non-governmental organizations or NGOs, and the mass media and individual citizens. These potential actors are fiercely independent of the government and have different types of resources at their disposal and employ varying strategies in their efforts to influence state and local public policy. Political participation in post-industrial America. This new style of politics is characterized in major part by an expansion of what has been considered appropriate political action. Historically, unprecedented economic growth, a prolonged period of prosperity, and relative political stability have created an increasingly better educated public that places demands on government to address ever-changing problems arising in the management of post-industrial societies, including the challenge of sustainability. The contemporary grassroots citizen organizations and associated social movements that arise in this context are considerably more likely to engage in protest politics or elite challenging political activities such as demonstrations and boycotts than were previous generations of activists. Protest politics is a form of activism where the contemporary grassroots citizens organizations and social movements participate in activities such as demonstrations and boycotts to assert political will. And elite challenging politics is political action aimed at creating change through challenging the powerful elites through direct actions such as demonstrations, petitions, and boycotts. Political conflicts arising over increasingly complex issues such as sustainable development, same-sex marriage, immigration reform, and No Child Left Behind, educational reform, have generated a multitude of new interest groups, many of which draw citizens into the political process via single-issue concerns as opposed to broad philosophical orientation to proper governance. One such policy arena with this type of political conflict is found in the domain of environmental policy. Given the difficulty ordinary citizens have in dealing with the scientific complexities of environmental issues, the process by which democratic societies confront complex scientific and technical issues involving the broader public interest is important to understand. We are seeing the emergence of community-based interest groups and social movements with demands for increased citizens' input in the decision-making process. Interest groups and community-based advocacy groups have pushed for increased democratization as a fundamental component of public policy. A social movement is group action characterized by a focus on a specific political or social issue by individuals who share a common outlook on society and are organized to cause social change. There are two distinct forms of political participation that should be recognized. The elite-directed mode of political action is represented by socio-political institutions such as political parties, bureaucratic agencies, labor unions, and industry associations that are hierarchical in nature and mobilize citizens into action in a coordinated top-down fashion. In contrast to this familiar pattern of citizen mobilization is the elite challenging mode of political action, a pattern of political activity that is generally more issue-specific, operates outside traditional political channels, and tends to make use of unconventional and sometimes disruptive tactics to influence public policy. Elite challenging activism is a form of political action that usually addresses specific policy goals, such as community opposition to the location of a prison in a town or city. Sometimes this type of community-based political activism has been called NIMBY, or not in my backyard, politics. Nonviolent resistance is often an important part of environmental action, lying across the road to block the onslaught of bulldozers or chaining oneself to the floor of a valley as the dammed waters start to rise. These can be powerful forms of protest. The press will take notice and the public will follow, so the world will learn of your cause. If you are willing to lay your life on the line, they think, you must be quite convinced of the correctness of your position. In Part 2 of Module 4, Key Actors in the Policy Process, we will discuss interest groups.